Hi, scholars. It's Mrs. G. Happy Wednesday. I hope that you are having a great week so far, and I hope that you are learning a lot of information. I know that there's a lot of information between wit and wisdom and core knowledge, so I hope that you are learning a lot and you're understanding all of it, and you're getting all of that knowledge, okay? So before we begin, I want to talk to you about who we've learned about so far. Okay, so we've learned quite a bit about two of the founding fathers of our country. Okay, we learned about George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. Okay, and so let me remind you that how the Pilgrims. Okay, back then the Pilgrims were one of the many groups of people to set up colonies in North America. Okay, there are there were 13 colonies in all who had to answer to the King of England. Okay, there were 13 colonies who had to answer to the King of England. Okay, the colonies were tired of answering to the King of England. Okay, and they wanted freedom to be able to do whatever they wanted to do. Okay, they wanted to make decisions for themselves, right? In our last read aloud, you heard about the talents and struggles of Thomas Jefferson. Okay, do you remember what Thomas Jefferson's talent was? Do you remember? We talked about how we have special talents. What was Thomas Jefferson's special talent? Did you say writing? Good job. That was his special talent. Okay, you can kiss your brain if you want to. Very good job. Okay, do you remember the document that Thomas Jefferson wrote and what it was called? What was it called? He wrote something very important that we still use today, and he named it something. Do you remember what it was called? The Declaration of Independence, right? Okay, good job. Okay, do you remember what country the colonies declared independence? What country did the colonies declare independence? England, right? Yes, England. So after the Declaration of Independence finished on the 4th of July, which might sound familiar to you, okay? So we became a new nation, okay? And we celebrate 4th of July because that is the birthday of our country. So just like you have a birthday, Miss G has a birthday, your teachers have a birthday, your mom and dad have a birthday, brother, sister, our country also has a birthday. And so when we're celebrating on 4th of July, we're watching fireworks and we're having a barbecue or we are swimming, right, in the summertime, that is when we celebrate the birth of our country. Okay, so it's America's birthday. Okay, so when our founding fathers wrote the Constitution, which is a constitution is a set of laws for the country to follow, they decided that the US would not become a kingdom. And so, do you remember what kind of government is called? So, our government is called democracy, right? But when we learned about kings and queens, their type of government was the kingdom, right? So in our kind of government is called democracy, like Mrs. G just said, and that just means that it's ruled by the people. Okay, do you remember when we talked about how someone becomes president? Okay, they get elected by the people, right? So we get to choose who we want. We get to vote and we get to have our opinion on who we want to be president. We get to choose where the president becomes a president by getting elected by the people, okay? So even though we won our freedom from the English, okay, and elected many presidents after Thomas Jefferson, there were people in the United States that were still not free. Okay, so before we begin our read aloud, I just want to give you a little bit of background information first. Okay, so about 200 years ago, yes, 200 years ago, that's a long time ago. Okay, about 200 years ago, one of the biggest issues that divided the country was slavery. Okay, and you're going to learn more about slavery and what that is and what it looks like and what it means. Okay, and we're going to talk about that in our read aloud. Okay. But the major issue was slavery, okay? Many people in the nation, many people in the northern states thought that slavery was wrong, whereas many people in the southern states felt that they needed slavery. They felt that slavery was right, okay? They didn't think it was wrong, okay? about 150 years ago, northern states and southern states fought a war over slavery. So they actually went to war over slavery, okay? And this war was called a civil war because it was fought between people who lived in the same country. And that is why it's called a civil war, because it was between two people, or between people who lived in the same country, okay? We learned about the American Revolution, okay? Was that a civil war? Was that fought between people who lived in the same country? It wasn't, right? It wasn't, because it was between the United States and England, two different countries, okay? So it's not called a civil war, okay? So the United States Civil War was fought among people in the United States of America, okay? In today's read aloud, you are going to hear about Abraham Lincoln. Have you heard about him? Have you heard of him before? So Abraham Lincoln, he was the president of our country during this very important time, okay? And I want you to carefully listen for what was in Abraham Lincoln's hat and why it was so important. So we're going to read our story in a minute, but I want you to carefully listen to what was inside Abraham Lincoln's hat, okay? And why it was super important, okay? So that's what I want you to think about as Mrs. G is reading, and we're going to figure out what was inside his hat, okay? So Mrs. G is going to share her screen with you, and we will get started. All right, so we have Abraham Lincoln's hat. And here we are. If I asked you what you kept under your hat, you might laugh and say, my head. What else would I keep under my hat? President Abraham Lincoln kept his head under his hat too. You may have seen pictures of a tall bearded man wearing this tall hat, okay? His tall black hat. But sometimes Mr. Lincoln kept something more than his head under there too. Here is the story of what lay beneath Abraham Lincoln's hat. So here is Abraham Lincoln and here's his hat. And we're going to read about what he kept under there besides his head, okay? All right, let's find out. Abraham Lincoln was a busy man, surrounded by many other busy men who helped him make important decisions. They grew impatient when they had to wait to meet with the president. So on this particular day, as they waited to see their chief, President Abraham Lincoln, they were not in a good mood. If you look at them, you can see they don't look very happy. They look kind of mad and upset, right? Not in a good mood. They became even angrier when they entered President Lincoln's office and found him in his rocking chair, his long legs stretched out before him, holding a book and laughing out loud. Each man thought, we're in the middle of a war. Does this president think we have nothing better to do than to listen to him laugh? We do not like war. We do not like sending people off to fight. We worry all the time about whether we are doing the best jobs we can. Yet he does not look worried, even though he is in charge of the whole war. So the war they were in was the United States Civil War, and it was between the northern states and the southern states. And Lincoln and his men fought for the northern states and were against slavery. Okay, and you're going to learn more about slavery and what that is, but just know that Abraham Lincoln was against slavery. Okay, he was very against it. Lincoln asked the men to sit down. He said, welcome, gentlemen. Before we get down to business, listen to this joke. The men listened as the president read the joke out loud. Then he laughed again, but no one else laughed. One man said, Mr. President, did you ask us here in order to read us a joke? That is a waste of our time. Lincoln set down his book. His face became serious. So what does it mean when Mrs. G says his face became serious? It means that he was not smiling. He wasn't happy. He just had you can see right here. Okay, maybe these people back here were serious, right? But that's what that means, okay? That is not why I called you here, he said. But running a war, knowing that people will get hurt or killed, is a sad business. When I can laugh, I do. For if I do not laugh, I might cry. I thought you could use a laugh too. So he was just trying to brighten the spirits of the people. Even though it was a sad time going on, he was just trying to make them smile, okay? He stood up, all 6 feet, 4 inches of him. That was a lot taller than most men in his time. Walking to his desk, he picked up his tall, black hat and reached inside. Pulling out a folded piece of paper, he said, I have been carrying this paper inside my hat band for more than 3 months, waiting for the right day to show it to you. Today is the day. I have word that our army has won a great battle. Perhaps we are beginning to win this terrible war at last. Now I feel safe in telling people what I want to do next. When George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and others started the United States, they tried to make a country in which people could be free to do as they wished and to travel wherever they chose to go. They did many wonderful things, but they failed to do one important thing. They did not end slavery in America. So you've heard the word slavery a couple of times, and slavery means that it allows one person to own and control another person, okay? People who are owned by others are called slaves, okay? And what we're going to talk about next, it kind of describes what slaves are and what they did back then and what they were made to do, okay? It's not a very good thing. It's a very sad thing. Being a slave was the worst thing a person could be. It is hard for us to understand, but in the old days, people could actually buy another person for money. The person who paid the money became the owner or master of whomever they bought. The person who was bought was a slave. A slave had to do whatever his or her master ordered. The slave did not get paid to work, but only received food to eat, clothes to wear, often old clothes, and a place to sleep. The slave could not choose to leave the master or say no to the master's commands. The law said that the master could punish a slave who refused to follow orders. Sometimes there would be a whole family of slaves, a father, a mother, and their children. Their master might decide, I don't need so many slaves. The master could sell the father to one person, the mother to another person, and the children to another. The family could not refuse, even though it meant they might never see each other again. Isn't that terrible? It's so sad. Makes Mrs. G really sad. Some of the people who started the United States said slavery is a terrible thing. We must not allow it in our new country. We believe in freedom. How could we ever have slaves here? But other people answered, slavery's fine. The rest of us will be free to decide things for ourselves, but slaves will not. If you say there will be no slavery, we will not help start the new country. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and their friends knew slavery was wrong, but they thought, we need slaves to help us start the country. Afterward, we can end slavery. Okay, so people thought they needed slaves to help them do work. Okay, especially the farmers in the South. Okay, they felt they needed the slaves to do all the work. Afterward, we can end slavery. But after America was born, year after year, many people still held on to slavery. The year before Thomas Jefferson died, he called slavery a tornado that will burst on us sooner or later. What do you think that means? Why do you think Jefferson called it slavery a tornado? Okay, just think about that. He feared there would be a war between those who wanted to end slavery and those who supported it. Abraham Lincoln was born the year Jefferson finished being president. Lincoln was born to a poor family living in the forest in a tiny cabin made of logs. His parents did not know how to read or write. Lincoln had to work hard to help them, and since he was a fair, honest person, he grew up believing everyone who worked should be fairly paid. Later, as a young lawyer, he gained a reputation of being the most honest lawyer in Illinois and was known by the nickname Honest Abe. So when Mrs. G says reputation, that word means it's how most people think of you, okay? So, of all the people that we've learned about so far, all the presidents we've learned about so far, who else had a reputation of being honest? Who else was an honest man? Okay. And that's why they had a nickname for Abraham Lincoln, and they called him Honest Abe because he was also very honest. Okay. Lincoln hated slavery. However, he also hated war. And when he became president, he tried to prevent the war from starting. But too many people on both sides were angry about many different issues, including slavery. And this just shows you a map of the United States during the Civil War. Okay, and then I will show you what the gray parts mean and what the blue parts mean in a minute, okay? In the South, where there were large amounts of land to farm, some people depended upon the work of the slaves. Since most slaves were in the southern states, the nation divided north versus south. Okay, so in blue, you're gonna see the north. Okay, so this is the north, the blue, okay, and the south is the gray. Okay, so north and the south, okay? People in most southern states decided, we'll start our own country that allows slavery. The North, with Lincoln as president, refused to let the South do that, saying, we should be one country and we should not allow slavery. The war Thomas Jefferson had warned against began. This was the United States Civil War. So that's how the Civil War became and it's starting, okay? On the day that President Lincoln invited these men from the government to his office, he told them, I am going to announce that all slaves in southern states will now be free, according to the law. I wrote that law on the paper I have been carrying in my hat. I call the law the Emancipation Proclamation. I'll proclaim that the slaves are emancipated. So when he says I'll proclaim, it means to let everybody know, okay, that the slaves are emancipated, and emancipated means set free. Okay, so he's declaring that he made the law, okay, that all slaves would be free in the southern states. Okay, anyone who doesn't let them go is breaking the law. President Lincoln went on, everyone must understand that America is truly a land of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, just as Thomas Jefferson wrote. The other men replied, Mr. President, we will gladly listen to your jokes if this is what happens afterward. But even after President Lincoln told everyone about the new law, the slave owners would not give up. It took nearly 3 more years of war before the Army of the South surrendered to Lincoln's Northern Army. The war ended. Now, slavery was really over. And the important paper that had helped make it happen was what Abraham Lincoln had been carrying under his hat. Okay. All right, that's the end of our read aloud, okay? Wow, it's a lot of information, okay? You guys have learned so much, and I know your brains are so filled with lots of good things. So for your think, pair, share that you can share with somebody or with yourself, I want you to answer this question, okay? Here's the question. Was the fight to free slaves important? Was the fight to free the slaves important? And why? Why was it important if you thought it was important? So go ahead and share that with somebody or think about it in your brain. You can think about that too, okay? I want to go over some vocabulary that we've learned, just to reiterate some of them here. Our first vocabulary word is slavery. Can you say slavery with Mrs. G? Slavery. And slavery means being owned by another person. Being owned by another person. Okay, and I have an example for you, just a sentence so you can understand it maybe a little better. Here's an example sentence. Long ago in the United States, some people were sold into slavery and made to work for the people who owned them. Okay, so that's just a little example, okay? Another word that you might have heard was serious. okay? And serious means not cheerful or not smiling, okay? And an example sentence would be, the serious look on Tom's face made Cindy realize he had something important to say. Okay, so maybe when you're in the classroom, right, when your teacher is teaching, right, maybe she has a serious face on her, a serious look on her face, and maybe she wants you or he wants you to pay attention, right? Okay, serious, that's what that means, okay? And our last vocabulary word is reputation. Can you say reputation? Reputation. And reputation means the main quality seen by others about a person. Okay, the main thing that other people notice about you, okay, that think about you, okay? Here's an example sentence. George Washington had a reputation for being honest, right? So there's that. Okay, and that was the vocabulary. So for your assessment, for your assignment for today, you have 3 things to do, but it's okay, it's not too bad, okay? The first thing I want you to answer is, who was the president during the Civil War? And you're gonna write that down on a piece of paper. So your first question is, who was the president during the Civil War? Okay, and then your second question is, what did the paper under Lincoln's hat say? Remember, he kept a very important paper under his hat. What did it say? Okay, mom and dad might have to help you, and that's okay. So what did the paper under Lincoln's hat say? Okay, and then your last question is, you are going to draw a picture about how you think Abraham Lincoln felt when the northern states won the war and slavery ended. So you're going to draw a picture of Abraham Lincoln, and you're going to draw a picture of how he might have felt, okay, when the northern states won the war and slavery finally ended. How do you think he felt? Okay, so just 3 questions. Write them down on a piece of paper and send them to your teacher, okay? All right, guys, we miss you, and we hope that you're all doing well and you're safe and healthy, and Mrs. G will see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.